Hello YouTube, welcome back campaigners. This is Campaign Terrain. I'm your host, That Guy Cross. Today I'm bringing you a project I did with the bricks I made in the last video, link up here. And what we're going to make is what I call city block blocks. You can put 3 or 4 houses on here, you can fit a pub, you can build a park, you can put a graveyard, whatever you want. These are designed to have alleyways on the side, that's why they've got the walls on. This is where all those bricks went. They're eventually going to be able to have elevated streets that fit below them that are just a little bit lower so you can have your traffic in them, but meanwhile you've got these deeper alleyways. So I'm going to work on those in some future videos. In addition to being a platform you can use just as a scene, or use as a city block, or as an alleyway, they also open up to put your terrain in when you're done, so it doesn't take up that much room on your shelf. You can take this, just put it away for storage. In addition, I did prototype one of them to have an entire interior playable so that you can have adventures in the city block. So you could use this as a basement under a pub or under a house, whichever, just part of a dungeon. So come along with me while I put a whole bunch of bricks onto stuff, and I hope you enjoy it. There's about to be a bump, take you into the video. In the meantime, there's going to be some links, like, subscribe, share, all of that. Please click on those if you would. It'll really help out the channel, and I'd appreciate it more than I can even tell you. Thanks for coming to Campaign Terrain. I'm your host, Cross, and I welcome you. A couple of things I've learned. The black paper on the Dollar Tree foam core does not come off nearly as easily as the white. That's good and bad. It's bad if you want it peeled and you want to put the texture on it. It's great if you want to glue things to it because it means it's not going to come loose when you put glue on it. So what I'm doing here is I am measuring these at a foot minus 3 thicknesses. So I've glued 3 of those together. Now the paper does make a difference. You'll notice that this one with the paper peeled off is much thinner than the one with the paper on it. If you want to get specific, this is 5mm, and by the time you peel off a 0.5 millimeter of paper on each side, you basically end up with a 4mm piece. So you're losing like 20% of the thickness. So I took one that's made with the paper, since I'm going to leave the paper on it, and I want to come to this foot mark, then put these 3 pieces thickness here. Then I used my handy dandy Milwaukee marker, and I left myself a mark on both sides. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and cut now. A few nice, low, soft, shallow passes. We'll get right through that in 2 or 3 passes. So that's my width. That's going to be one wall across that way. So I now need it as tall as my tallest figure's spear or antlers or horns on his helmet or raised arm over his head, whatever. So this figure happens to be, with base and all, just shy of 2 inches. So I'm going to go to 2 1/4 inches up and make my strips that way. I think I can get 4 of them out of here, which will be the whole room. Let's find out. What we're going to do now is start to put brick after brick after brick after brick on it. When we're done, these are going to line up. This one's going to line up this way, so that that's one of the thicknesses gone. That's why we need it shorter on the one end. And then it's going to have a layer of bricks here, and once we flip it and it's the other corner, it's going to have a layer of bricks here. So layer of brick, layer of brick, layer of the other wall butted up against it, and that's our 3 thicknesses that we cut off.
Apologies. I lost several hours of footage here, but it was more of what you're seeing here. At first I was using white glue, but that took quite literally days to dry, and I don't have that kind of patience. So I had switched back over to my handy dandy hot glue, again using it on low temp, not high temp. Didn't want to burn myself, didn't want to melt any foam. I don't know if you can tell here, but I'm only doing about 4 or 5 bricks length at a time, and that stops the glue from cooling too quickly. So I'll lay down a line and then put the bricks on. These are going in a standard pattern where the bricks are cross-hatched with each other. The brick on top sits over the crack between two other bricks. You've seen bricks, you know how this works. So more of this, on and on and on and on, all together, this not including drying time, for all 12 walls. That's all 4 outside walls on both pieces for 8 walls, and the inner walls you can see in the distance here on this picture. This took approximately 7 to 8 hours total of gluing. It went much, much faster for the portions I did with a hot glue. Once I'd completed gluing, I used the heat gun to remove any wisps of hot glue that were left over. This provides 2 benefits. Not only do you get rid of all the glue wisps to make a cleaner project, but the heat also hardens the outside surface of the foam, making it more rigid and sturdy. You'll notice that I trim the corners and the side of the bricks where there was an overhang. I tend to work from the top down and trim at the bottom so that any messed up or strange looking bricks are at the bottom and less noticeable. That top edge is going to get seen a lot more, and so I work from the top down and then trim the bottom bricks. For the floor portion, I cut 2 squares to match the inside dimensions. Now the inside dimensions will differ if you're building with bricks on the inside for a playable interior, or leaving the bricks out and just using it as storage. So you want to measure that carefully and then make 2 layers. At least the top layer of that has to be peeled foam core. The underside of the top layer can be paper. The bottom layer can be foam core, peeled or not, or cardboard, or any other basing material you'd like. The top one is going to be textured and have a pattern put in it if you wish to, so that definitely has to be foam, but the others can be any material you choose. You can see that I'm placing a gridded pattern on this. I am using 1-inch grids, the traditional Dungeons & Dragons scale. I typically don't use that, but for this project it just seemed right. It is a basement floor. I doubted it was going to just be solid dirt or anything, so these are taking the shape of basic flagstone or ceramic floor tiles. To make my pattern, I attempted to find the center point of the floor and then work my way out. That way any of my off-center tiles would be at the edges rather than having an off-center piece at the middle. I did not do a very good job of this, and in fact got the entire floor just slightly rotated, and it turned out fine in the end. You can't even tell once the final piece is complete. So your mileage may vary, but don't sweat this too much. Notice I'm using a blunt pencil to both mark the edges and to drag the lines across to create the pattern. I'm not using a knife and cutting the slit and then widening it with a pencil or anything like that. All I'm doing is just drawing it in. Now this pencil sinks about halfway into the foam, which is good. And you don't actually want to try to perforate the paper on the back side because this is supposed to be one solid sheet. Place the floor in the center, I put the hot glue along one edge and then pressed that firmly into place and held it until it had cooled and congealed. Once cooled, I went to each of the other edges and squirted the glue between the lip and the wall, and then just pressed it into place. I did one side at a time so that I can hold it in place and make sure that it got a good bond, and then I moved to each one. The entire process took less than a minute. Now the top. Again, the top surface is going to be textured foam, so you want to peel the top. It does not matter if you peel the bottoms or not, but I left mine on. I thought it would give it more rigidity. For the two layers that go underneath it, that will essentially be the plug that keeps it in place once you've placed it on top, it doesn't matter if those are foam core, cardboard, whatever type of stock you'd like. For the texturing, I used a tried and true aluminum foil ball to simply give it a bumpy, rocky sort of texture. Again, I used a sort of 1-inch grid to pattern this. You'll notice that I've inset it by about a 1/2 inch on the edges, just to give it a little more patterned look and to maybe make the edge look a bit like a city curb. So you can put whatever pattern you like on this. You can use the same squares, you can use flagstones, you can use cobbles. However you want to pattern it is up to you. I don't think that a smooth one has very much visual appeal, but if you were going to do something like flock it and make it look grassy, that might be fine. Again, you're going to want these next two layers to be the same dimension as the interior of your space, whether that's a storage box or a bricked-in playable box. Once you've got those two layers cut and glued together, you're going to want to glue them onto the bottom of your surface piece. You're going to want to center that as well as possible. You really want to make sure that the edges of your surface and the sides of the box are all going to match up. You want this to be a nice, clean, even fit. Now it's time for the base coat. You're going to want to use a dark base for this if you're going for something stone. A lot of people use black, but I use a really dark gray. Now I'm using my boom. A boom is simply my name for the 50% PVA glue and 50% paint. You'll notice it looks a little bit lighter gray here in this picture, but it dries a bunch darker because the white PVA in it turns clear as it dries. Using the boom has two benefits. It stabilizes the foam by hardening it, and it also, of course, colors the foam for your final project. Once I completed painting the body of the room, I set it on top of a small stack of foam so that the edges wouldn't stick to anything as it dried.
Right, there you have it. After only 11 hours of gluing, 3 days of waiting for white glue to dry, no time for the hot glue to dry, prototyping, cutting, changing, moving, arranging, I have 2 boxes. One with an interior wall, so I can use this as a playable space. It is the only one of those I'm building. It was much more difficult, and I only need one. And something I can use as storage, or just as the blocks as they were intended. Now I'm going to make, have to do math, it's hard for me, 7 more of those. So I want to make 3x3, 9 square. There's going to be roads between them. That's for a later video. So let's get on to painting these, shall we?
Next, for the top surfaces of both the exterior floors and the interior floor, as well as the walls on the interior of the basement, I started my next coat with brown. Again, I used my boom because more glue is more sturdy, and that's good. Notice I'm not going for quite complete coverage here. I do want a little bit of the gray to still show through. So this is, I don't know, 80, 90, 95%, something like that. Just leave a little gray to show through. Now here I've moved on to the exterior walls. For those I'm going to use green boom. Again, glue is good. And I'm using green so that these look a little bit algae covered or mossy. These are going to be exterior walls in dark and dank alleys. I really want to show off some of that ooky gooky feel that you get by just leaving stones outside in the rain. Now for the first of 2 gray layers. This one needs to be just a little bit lighter than the layer before it, so this is going to be half white and half gray. This is going to be applied in about 60% coverage on all surfaces, including the walls and the floors. Now for the second gray. This one needs to be lighter yet, so it's going to be 2 or 3 parts white to the 1 part of gray. This will be applied in only about 20 to 30% coverage. This is just to lighten up the very top edges. It's not quite a dry brush, but it highlights the higher parts. And now it's time for some washes. I have washes in several different colors. I'm going to go ahead and match those colors with where I've previously painted. That means that where I had it brown, I'm going to wash in brown. And where I had it green, I'm going to wash in green. I apply this very liberally and find that it dries to quite a pleasing finish. For the penultimate step, I applied a very light tan dry brush. Now this is about 3 parts white to 1 part of brown, and it is a true dry brush. You want to use a dry brush for this and just catch the very edges of the masonry. The reason I call that a penultimate step is that after this, off camera, I sprayed the entire thing with a clear matte varnish. I'm not sure that this was necessary, but I like to be safe rather than sorry.
So there you have it. City block blocks with storage inside. And you'll be able to build these with no problem. They're really simple. It's just a matter of brick after brick after brick after brick. And once you're done, take them, put them away on your shelf. Good to go. Thank you for coming to Campaign Terrain. I hope you're enjoying these builds. I've got some more coming up. Like I said, the roadways, some bridges, some ramps, things like that to go with these. So be looking forward for that. I've got, in the weeks since I've been back, I've literally come up with 385, I think, new projects. So I have no end of stuff to be bringing you here on Campaign Terrain. So I hope you come back, and I hope you've been enjoying it. In just a second, I'm going to have some beauty shots after this last bump. Feel free to stick around for those. You don't have to, but I really would like it if you would click like, share, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell, all that fun stuff. A couple other links for you that would really help out the channel. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming to Campaign Terrain. I love you. And until next time, I wish you luck in your campaign.